The Milwaukee Bucks have everyone fooled. And as the upcoming season is fast approaching, reporters, fans, all around the NBA are writing off the Milwaukee Bucks, and one particular reporter has come out and made some blasphemous comments surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm going to break down those comments and break down what it means going forward as the Bucks are poised to have a breakout season. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're part of the 86% who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. So it would mean the world to myself if you could hit that subscribe button. Go down, check if you're part of the 86%, hit that button for us. But without further ado, let's dive into it. So obviously, the Milwaukee Bucks had a very disappointing season last year. They acquired Dame before the season, and it was supposed to be a turning point, another championship year for the Bucks, and ultimately they fell quite short. But on that note, now coming into this upcoming season, they made tons of additions that are going to be crucial for the team, for them to be able to take the leap. They made some additions to the coaching staff. But despite all of that, fans of, whether it's some Bucks fans themselves, with fans across the NBA of other teams, of the Celtics, and multiple really, but one specific reporter came out and said some very interesting things that has Bucks fans absolutely fired up. We're going to break all those down right now. So that reporter, you saw it in the intro, is Zach Lowe. Now, he's obviously never afraid to give his opinion, whether it's about the Bucks or any other team, but he said some things that I think are a little bit unfair considering where the Bucks currently are. But I want to get your thoughts on it in the comments as well, what your thoughts are on these very interesting comments. So you can see here, it was on this podcast by Zach Lowe. He said, it's very easy to find people around the league who are like, it's over, just move on. Lowe said in the podcast on Thursday's episode, if you're curious, at the 17-minute mark, he said, start thinking about the next steps for the Bucks franchise, whatever transition that ends up being. So he's saying that it's very easy to find people across the league, people within his circle, him himself to a degree, saying, hey, just move on. It's not the time for the Bucks to go all in, even though they just traded a ton of assets for Damian Lillard in what was at the time a very solid trade. Right now, it's aging a little bit poorly, but we're gonna have to see how it actually ages because it's only 1 year with Damian Lillard. But Zach Lowe said, I think the ifs and the age just pile up to the point that it's too big of a hill for a lot of the skeptics to climb. So that's what Zach Lowe said. And there's a lot to dive into here. So obviously, he didn't give his full opinion, but the comments that he made were very interesting. So he's hearing from across the league, from NBA executives, from other people, a lot of the Bucks skeptics saying it's time to throw the towel in. Now, if you're a Bucks fan listening to that, you're obviously, and you're, watching the Bucks every game, and you're kind of in the Bucks circle. It seems a little bit ridiculous. Now, obviously, it's no secret that the Milwaukee Bucks had a very disappointing year last year. They gave up all of their assets, not all of their assets, but a lot of their assets in order to get, of course, Damian Lillard, and it kind of rubs salt on the wound that Drew Holiday, who the Bucks had and then traded in order basically to get Damian Lillard, if you kind of put it all together. Holiday went out and won a championship with the Celtics the very next year. So that's obviously, there's no avoiding that. And I can see why some skeptics may think, hey, right off the Bucks, it's too tall of a hill to climb. You're looking at the East and you're looking at the Boston Celtics and the powerhouse team they have with the bargain deal they got with Drew Holiday, having to give up basically no assets. They have Derek White. They have all these assets locked up long term. But when you're looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, they won a championship very recently, and they obviously lost Drew Holiday, who was integral to that championship, but they still have a ton of assets, and they made it their mission this offseason to help match up better against any team across the league. Specifically, of course, their biggest hill to climb is going to be beating the Boston Celtics. They're objectively the best team heading into this upcoming season after dominating the NBA last year. But the additions we're going to dive into now, their team, they're ready to prove everybody wrong. And whether you agree with these comments or not, to write them off completely and say that they have too tall of a hill to climb when they have one of the best players in the NBA in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They have MVP caliber. They have an MVP caliber point guard, in Damian Lillard, even though he didn't necessarily show it last year. He's already came out this offseason and said he's feeling better than ever. He's ready to prove these skeptics wrong. So no matter what you're feeling about the team, to say that they should start thinking about the next steps of the franchise is a little bit ridiculous considering 1 year ago in that offseason, they were by some favored to win the championship this past year. Now, again, it didn't work out that way, but they've made some changes, and I want to dive into a lot of these changes because if you're a Bucks fan out there, you have a lot of things to be optimistic about. But you can see here, insiders bash Giannis, Dame's Bucks. It's over. Just move on, which is a bit wild. 1 year. That's all it takes in the NBA is one down year from Damian Lillard, from the Milwaukee Bucks, then to be already written off as one, even though they had one of the most talented rosters in the league, especially with the additions they were able to grab this offseason. A lot of them at a very, very budget friendly amount. So let's dive right into it here and what the article says as well, kind of just bouncing back off the Zach Lowe's comments. So it's obviously the Bucks are preparing to begin their second campaign led by Giannis and Damian Lillard, as we know. And Again, we're not going to get into last season. It was very, very disappointing if you're a Bucks fan. They're battling injuries, whether it's from Lillard or Giannis, even though both of those guys seem to be healthier now. But I want to dive into some of the additions that they made and some of the players that they lost as well. We're hoping that Chris Middleton is going to be healthy, even because he had a lot of ankle surgeries and he's had a lot of injuries in his career, but he had his off-season ankle surgeries in order to return his spot in the starting lineup this fall. So those multiple surgeries, not just one, he's had multiple surgeries on his ankle to help hopefully get it better heading into next season. And health is going to be the thing that is most important for Milwaukee Bucks, whether it's the Giannis injuries, the Damian Lillard injuries, the Chris Middleton injuries. Those are your big three. And if they aren't healthy, then you're going to struggle beating any of the teams, because the East, although not quite, the Celtics are better than every other team in the East aside from the Bucks, depending on how you see it. There's still a lot of good teams, and whether it's the Pacers, the Heat, there's still a lot of guys that can battle. But let's think about some of the assets that they've kind of exchanged and gained. So they got Taurean Prince. We know that the Bucks hired Darvin Ham. We know that from his time in Los Angeles, Darvin Ham adored Taurean Prince, having him in the starting lineup, and a lot of Lakers fans were saying, do not have him in the starting lineup. But now that he's moved to the assistant coach's role, and they also got Gary Trent Jr., which we'll discuss in a minute, Taurean Prince is going to be a very pivotal, what we assume is a bench piece, but I guess there is a world where he starts, depending on what they do with Gary Trent Jr. and how Gary Trent Jr. does, whether it's in training camp and preseason, whatever it ends up being. How they're seeing him behind the scenes ultimately was going to decide that. But swapping Jay Crowder for Taurean Prince is an interesting upgrade. Taurean Prince, they added him on a minimum deal, and that's going to be the story of this offseason. They obviously didn't have a ton of cap room after the Damian Lillard trade, but you have Taurean Prince. You look at on paper, they're very similar, Jay Crowder and Taurean Prince, but Prince is significantly younger, and at this point of their career is the better player, especially for what the Milwaukee Bucks need. They're both going to provide defense. They're both going to provide three-point shooting. Obviously, Jay Crowder provides a bit more veteran leadership, but at this point, they already have that with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you even have Darvin Ham now, who is one of the best and highly regarded assistant coaches in the NBA. Adding a younger Taurean Prince who's a bit more mobile, a bit of a better defender at this point of their career, and can still shoot the ball very, very well, especially because Taurean Prince is used to playing with stars now. He just played a couple of years with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, a star-studded lineup there. He should be able to complement Dame and Giannis very seamlessly, as opposed, Jay Crowder has as well, but he's getting a little bit on the old side. So I love this upgrade for the Bucks. Jay Crowder, Taurean Prince. Prince is going to be a very, very good signing at a very low risk as well by signing to the minimum. Similarly, Gary Trent Jr., they're upgrading from Malik Beasley to Gary Trent Jr. Now, this one's interesting because obviously Beasley had a very solid year last year. He was one of their more consistent starters. If we rewind back and look at who started, he started 77 of 79 regular season games, putting up 11 points, 3 boards, and 1.4 assists. So it's up to you. Some fans I know out there say that Malik Beasley could be better than Gary Trent Jr. That being said, Gary Trent Jr. did have a bit of a down year last year, but they both provide similar things. Malik Beasley is a very, very good, one of the best three-point shooters in the league when he's healthy and when he's really rolling. But Gary Trent Jr. has the upside of being a very good defender. He's yet to really show it. He showed it briefly in his early times in Toronto and when he was younger in Portland. But he has the ceiling, especially when he's going to be cushioned by guys like Dame, by Giannis. He's going to get a ton of wide open threes when Giannis penetrates the paint, when they're looking to double Dame when he's on fire. Gary's going to get a lot more open looks than he ever did with, of course, the Toronto Raptors. And obviously, Gary Trent Jr. played with Damian Lillard, so there's a lot of, obviously, relationships there between Dame and Gary Trent Jr. They're going to have a lot of synergy that's going to get Gary more open looks than he did in Toronto, because there were times in Toronto, if you look back at the clips, where Gary was kind of forcing shots. Now, whether that was because of lack of offense in his mind, whether that's because a lack of star power, that's yet to be seen, but the Raptors haven't been competitive now for the past couple of years, so that obviously may have hindered some of Gary Trent's play, and I think that him getting a much bigger role, a more prominent role, is by being a lot more protected, especially when you have a center now, Brook Lopez, who can shoot the ball as well. Like, the floor is going to be much more open for Gary Trent Jr. I think that this is going to be a very, very good addition. I think ultimately at the end of the year, when we're looking back at this, no matter how it goes, we're going to consider Gary Trent Jr. a significant upgrade over Malik Beasley, and one that was one of the steals of the offseason for the Milwaukee Bucks. And finally, a guy I've been high on in the last video, and I've been high on for a while, is DeLon Wright. Obviously, he played with the Heat last year. He signed with them. He's going to be a great backup point guard. He's a tall point guard. He's 6'5". He's a veteran now at this point. He's over 30 years old. He can play on both sides of the ball, and he's not going to do anything crazy, but he can also play the two guard. He can play shooting guard if he has to, especially if Dame's on the floor. He can play alongside Dame. He can shoot the ball fairly well. He's not going to be a sharpshooter, but he's going to be there for good rebounding guard, a good defending guard, can shoot the ball a little bit, and is going to help man that second unit, especially that is now a lot deeper, whether it's Delon Wright, Taurean Prince, and obviously a lot of their younger guys. They're going to be able to go out there and have a lot more experience, a much deeper lineup. And obviously their bench has been up and down the past couple of years. They added to that. They got rid of some of the guys that were a bit more inconsistent, added some more consistency. And they're going to prove the haters wrong in this upcoming season. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the Zach Lowe comments and just the comments of a lot of fans and reporters around the league doubting the Milwaukee Bucks. I want to hear what your thoughts are. See you soon.